So I'm Luca Mazzarella. I'm a medical oncologist and group leader of the Laboratory of Translational Oncology at the European Institute of Oncology in Milan, in Italy, and affiliated to the Alleanza contro il Cancro network. So nowadays there's of course many challenges. One that I would like to draw everyone's attention because it's surprisingly under-researched, but although it's getting a bit of interest in the last 5 or 6 years, is the inequality in the accessibility to clinical trials all over the world, and even in Western countries where of course most of the clinical trials are conducted. Clinical trials are now becoming a way to provide access to innovative treatments and most likely effective treatments to patients before the treatments are commercialized. Of course, these do not make part of the healthcare itself, because the efficacy of these treatments, of course, is not yet fully demonstrated, but because of the improvements in clinical trials over the last years, the chances that now a certain treatment is beneficial for a patient is increasing because the trials are conducted in a better way and safer way. So at the same time, clinical trials are very complex endeavors, and they are now conducted on a global scale. They're very expensive, and of course they need to be conducted in academic centers where there is the expertise for conducting them. But by doing so, the number of hospitals that are able to conduct clinical trials is limited across the world, and of course depends a lot on the quality of the healthcare system in that particular nation. And that creates inequalities, because it means that nations and even areas within nations where there is a high concentration of academic centers will benefit the local population in terms of access to clinical trials, and whereas the people residing in areas farther from academic clinical trials, academic clinical centers will not have the same level of access to clinical trials and therefore innovation. And so this has been now demonstrated to introduce also biases in the interpretation of the results, and also problems when you implement the results of the clinical trial in the real life, because of course if you are targeting a very specific narrow population, the genetic diversity of that population, the clinical characteristics, the socioeconomic characteristics of that population may be significantly different from those that you encounter when you move that drug from the trial space into the real world. So there is a lot of interest in identifying ways to democratize, if you want, access to clinical trials by spreading the clinical trials across the world in a more equal way, and also providing novel ways to access experimental treatments. For instance, the possibility to send the drugs at home rather than forcing the patients to go in the academic trials, or subsidizing the travel expenses, or a number of ways that may facilitate the access also for patients that do not live very close to these centers. And it's very important that these themes are researched, because without the availability of quantitative data on how much how much the population of different countries is able to access these clinical trials, it's not possible to then implement policies to reduce these inequalities. So I do think that identifying ways to democratize the access to clinical trials is going to significantly improve the possibility to obtain useful data from these trials.